Welcome back to another Colors of Prague. This is the first episode in about a month. For those unaware and new to the Podbean cast version of this is a program where I discuss and review progressive rock recordings from the past and the present, discuss some live shows for prog bands, and pretty much it's an international thing, this whole genre. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into Jethro Tull. So while the first Jethro Tull album did not appear until 1968's This Was, members of the band had been appearing on the music scene in various groups since 1963, which is true. Ian Anderson, then lead singer and guitarist, formed the Blades in '63. The Blades were a psychedelic blues band. By '65, in a lineup change, they became the John Evans Band and then the John Evans Band. John Evans was a keyboard player, and his mother forked over cash for them to have a van to transport their gear from gig to gig. So that was the John Evans Band. This band dissolved by 1967, and Ian Anderson reformed another group with Mick Abrahams on guitar, bass player Glenn Cornick, and drummer Clive Bunker. They toured relentlessly, many local clubs. Some clubs, there were so many bands playing at that time, some clubs didn't want to rebook bands. And they were like a psychedelic blues band at the time. So, and that genre was very popular at that time. So what would become Tull changed their names many times. So the club would rebook them, not knowing they were this band or that band. Bag of Blues, Candy Colored Rain was some of the names they used. Before settling on Jethro Tull, supposedly a real-life character from English folk history who invented a device to more efficiently plot and grow grains in fields. If you're new to the show, I do a lot of research. Some of it may turn out over the years to be inconclusive, but this much I found out. So being the rhythm guitar player, Ian Anderson started listening more to classical and jazz music. Allegedly, he is said to self-teach himself the flute, which must not have been an easy task, as early Tull album musical passages recall both Roshan Roland Kirk, the jazz musician, and Herbie Mann. Anderson also adopted an odd humming technique that involved scat singing while playing the flute and blowing through it at the same time. Those familiar with early live Tull performances are quite familiar with that. That appears on some songs on the albums as well. He would do all this while fluttering his tongue, which is a technique used by blues harmonica players, going all the way back to Sonny Boy Williamson and others. It's a very interesting technique, and it became a Tull trademark, an Ian Anderson trademark, and definitely a Tull trademark over the years. So he took jazz, flute, and he took harmonica playing and adapted it for his own style and sound. Also, over the period of time, English folk, Celtic, American folk, classical, and improvisational sounds took hold in Jethro Tull. A lot of Americana music, early days, you would say the Byrds and the band and others were really becoming popular. Fairport Convention, bands like that in the UK were becoming popular. And classical music in the mid to late '60s was listened to by many parents in the homes, and adapted to the children who were always around listening to the sounds. So of the 5 recordings I will discuss today, which are This Was, Benefit, Aqualung, A la Mode, and the Zealot Game, they all bring a familiar style and sound to the listener's ears, although there have been many changes in the lineups over the years. So I'm going to start with This Was. This happens to be the Steven Wilson remix and one of the best of the early Tull remixes. Hold that up straight. This one's fully loaded, as they say, because it has 3 CDs, DVD audio, and it's just got, you know, the original mix of the album, the remix, associated recordings, which are singles that appeared at that time, and so on and so forth. It's really one of Steven Wilson's better remix jobs. Actually, the work he did with Tull is some of his best work, along with the remixes he did on some of the Yes albums, many of the early ones. So This Was features Anderson, Abrahams, Cornick, and Bunker, that lineup. Tunes featured are like The Jaunty, My Sunday Feeling, Dharma for One, Song for Jeffrey, pretty much are the blueprint for the Tull sound. But there's also quite a bit of that early Tull blues rock sound on here. We got to keep in mind the band was shedding on clubs for years. So, you know, it's not something they're going to drop right away. This is Mick Abraham's one and only Tull appearance on record. And he gets one lead vocal, Move On Alone, which is kind of ironic because he left the band to form his own heavy blues rock band called Bloodwind Pig, which also had a flute player as well as a saxophone player. Interesting sound Bloodwind Pig had. Martin Barr replaced Abrahams on guitar for 69 stand-up, of which I'll get to another time. A lot of people like that album, I have found. I just found it just didn't really work for me. Some people say, well, that's the beginning of Tull's prog rock sound, progressive rock sound, but if so, why is it just not really gelling? It's just like something's not quite there. And there's one song that Mick Abrahams does play guitar on, but I believe it's probably left over from an earlier session. So instead we come to 1970s Benefit. And this is another Steven Wilson remix. 2 DVDs, 4 CDs. I mean, this is crazy shit. This is 6 things, a very nice booklet where they spoke to everyone over the years, and including Steven Wilson from Porcupine Tree, those who don't know, who remixed this. And it's like various thoughts and such, and it's quite a nice package. This is probably one of the more recent ones to come out. They've remastered Tull material over the years, and so actually Steven Wilson has gone back to his own remasters, kind of built up upon them. Anyway, let's go back to Benefit. John Evans, if you remember, Tull was briefly the John Evans Band, and the John Evans returned on keyboards, not fully a band member, although he appears on the album quite a bit. And this is, again, one of my personal favorites of the Tull albums. And it's understandably, everybody has a favorite of any band I would discuss that has recorded material for a very long time, decades. And in this case, 5 or 6 decades. You know, everyone has favorites. You might get somebody that agrees on your top 5 or your top 10, but yeah. Anyway, Benefit is one of my very favorites, probably the favorite. Less overt blues rock than on This Was and on Stand Up. This, to me, this solidifies the mix of rock with folk, jazz, classical. There's even some avant-garde stuff going on here. I think this is really a true milestone in progressive rock music. With You There to Help Me, Nothing to Say, from Michael Collins to Cry You a Song, Saucity, You're a Woman, are all standout tunes. And Jethro Tull also played parts of Europe a lot, touring to support these albums. And I'm sure they were a big influence on bands like PFM and Bonko and even Leorbe, especially PFM, who really adopted a lot of these sounds. Another thing, coincidentally, Thies Van Leer of Focus also learned his own not dissimilar flute technique by mixing jazz, classical, and rock influences. The first album from Focus, Focus Plays Focus, also known as In and Out of Focus, was released in 1970. Maybe they were listening to early Tull, who knows? But they're not really a similar band, Focus, but maybe Ian Anderson's sound style emboldened him to proceed with his Focus vision, which is a more jazz, classical, rock kind of thing before they would veer off in different kinds of tangents over a while. But I wanted to mention that. Next, we have Aqualung in 1971. This is one of the reduced version of the Steven Wilson remix. It's good. It's not as good as the other Steven Wilson remixes, and I believe he went back to this. There was originally, when this first came out, a multi-disc set. This is only 2 in here, featuring new stereo remixes and additional recordings means singles, the songs that didn't make it to the final album, and you have the original mix as well. So Aqualung has been a consistent and steady fan favorite over the years. While Anderson, Barr, and Bunker on drums still remain, Glenn Cornick had been replaced by Jeffrey Hammond, and John Evans is now official member of the band. Aqualung is a concept album of sorts, seeing the beginning of Ian Anderson's musings on morality, creating semi-fictional characters with which he lives through, and semi-obscure religious musings. Aqualung is a character who knows from where and who acts as Anderson's vision of the decay of social and political morality. True. He's an older man, Aqualung, a vagrant, a potential child molester, a madman, possibly the result of the moral decay depicted in some of these songs. That's side 1. Side 2 of the original vinyl album. Side 2 are Ian's commentary in songs on the combined religions, or specifically a Christian faith or neo-Christian faith, that he personally feels disappointed him, and the masses too. Then there's the songs, back to side 1. There's Aqualung, a great prog intro to the first side, Cross-Eyed Mary, a Stones-like cruncher, that one, and even the brief Wondering Aloud is a gem. Side 2, subtitled My God, is about My God, Ian's vision of his God, and it features that exceptional track over 7 minutes long. Locomotive Breath, a popular radio rock hit, appears in side 2, but the album closer, Wind Up, seems to offer no answers to Ian's questions or views posed in these songs. Anyway, Aqualung is a good album. It's a fan favorite. The 40th anniversary at the time, 2011, I believe, Steven Wilson remix is good. Not quite as good as this was in Benefit, but very nice. 10 years on, and we have A, also known as A La Mode. And it's referred to as the A album. I guess no one really noticed it also was A La Mode. And I wonder, depending on what you might read or hear, it's an entirely different Jethro Tull of sorts. Drummer Mark Craney, formerly of the Jean-Luc Ponty Band, has joined. Eddie Jobson, formerly of on keyboards and violin, formerly of Yes and Roxy Music fame, has joined the band. And Dave Pegg, bass player from Fairport Convention, has joined the band. And Martin Barr and Ian Anderson, only lone holdovers, along with John Evans, still around on keyboards. It's a 1980 album and definitely retains the basic core sound of Jethro Tull. Ian still commenting on then modern life and social politics, and displays an interest in the UFO phenomenon, which has been around for forever, but it might also explain the strange photo of the band members in flight suits, either in the airport or on an airship of some sorts. Musically, if not lyrically, it's a strong progressive rock record from Tull, especially after a few recordings prior to this done in a more self-reflective possibly even folky and Celtic vein, which is not a knock on that. I just feel this was, after a period, this was a good return to the Tull sound. So A la mode is something that is pretty good. And, oh, by the way, this is another one of those Steven Wilson remixes. We have 3 CDs and 3 DVDs, some live shows of the time period. Actually, some of these other ones I mentioned as well have live shows in the time period that these albums were recorded and they were touring. So quickly going to jump to the Zealot Game. Let's go all the way to 1922. Step back for this one. There you go, gentlemen, ladies. Zealot Game, released in 2022, is the most recent Jethro Tull album. Basically, it's also the first studio album by Tull, the Tull touring band, who pre-COVID had been touring for nearly 20 years. So this is the first time that Ian Anderson's version of Jethro Tull with this touring band, post Martin Barre, has actually recorded an album. But sort of yes and no, because Ian recorded quite a bit of these songs during lockdown, and then sent them to the band members. And I'm still quite unsure whether they actually got together at some point. All this was mixed virtually and sent back and forth. Anyway, some have called this Ian Anderson's religious album without actually listening to it. He's still going on about morality, politics, and has a lot to chew on here. And it takes time to revisit this album. When I first heard it, I wasn't quite sure I liked it or not, and it took me a few revisits to finally get it. Side 2 of this has a song, Mine is the Mountain, which revisits some themes from Aqualung. And if you remember, Society is a Woman, he has Shoshana sleeping, very similar kind of thing. So this is Ian's, again, take on religion. Not so much a pro-religious album, but his just take on what's going on and you know, how that collides with reality and morality in the modern days. Now, some people have said Ian Anderson's voice is aged. Yes, he just recently turned 75. But at times he still sounds often enough like his old self. You know it's him. And, of course, there's that flute. Wonderful flute playing as always. Since 1968, and there have been 22 studio albums attributed to Jethro Tull, including 2003's The Jethro Tull Christmas album, which was, up to then, the most prior studio record. Now, it's been there's 10 official live albums and a variety of remasters, remixes, and anniversary special editions have come down the pike. As a solo artist, yes, that's right, as a solo artist, Ian Anderson, since 1983's Walk Into the Light, has recorded a number of them. Not as voluminous as the Tull records, but some consider 2000 Secret Language of Birds among his very best solo work. That's an instrumental album, by the way, and some of the Ian Anderson solo albums are instrumental albums. Very, very interesting stuff. And I recently discovered on CD and DVD a Prog rock festival from 2010 in Italy, where there were many musical guests from other countries, and Ian Anderson joined the band PFM, the Italian band PFM, for several songs, and it was like wonderful to finally see that, and it looks like all were having a great time. So I cherry-picked some Jethro Tull, some things I liked, and some things I think are worth discovering for those of you who haven't listened to some of it. Anyway, thanks for listening and watching this episode of The Colors of Prog. We'll be back soon.